You won't be able to find out who this rock star is unless you're learning more about them on a deeper level, not just surface level. And in order to do that, you need to ask powerful questions that get them speaking about themselves, their desires, their goals. This is how you will get to know them as a person, which will help you assess personality fit and whether your vision aligns with their goals and values. Is if you know for sure you are going to move forward with this person, let's just set up the next step on the call if possible. Let's put a cushion of 5 to 10 minutes for the end of the call. You coordinate schedules and get that next step on the calendar. Every job is going to feel some type of stress, some type of discomfort, I would say. I sense it as a red flag, and it's a cultural misalignment. If there's no patience in the process, or they give you attitude, something like that. They don't even crack a smile.
What recruitment that was successful were you most proud of? And another way of looking at this might be, which one was the most challenging that really required you to dig deep and use all your skills?
Keeping momentum high is you have to ensure that you're being explicit as to your interest level too. And I've seen this many, many times where this person just doesn't know, does this company even like me? And they like them so much, they didn't even care to say it. Okay, so keeping the momentum high throughout the process.
So explain that, and also I think it helps to get specific and talk a little about the cadence. What does that mean specifically? How often you want to talk to them, when it's too much, etc. So tell me about that.
What you don't want to do is have an interaction, have a discussion, and there's no timeliness as to the next interaction, the next discussion. You don't want them, the rock star, to assume that you're not interested. If they don't hear back, they have nothing to go off of. The momentum they're losing momentum. They're not hearing from you. And I can get into some more details. It just won't work in their favor.
Okay.
You're building momentum with not just an average person. It's with someone who wants to feel valued and respected in the process, and not just resume. Definitely want to re-emphasize that. We want to, when you're keeping momentum high overall, this is just in general, staying authentic, show that you care about their goals and successes, building a real connection, not just surface level. I see a lot of the times it's kind of okay, this isn't I don't know how to say in the metaphor. There's something you're not just turning over people like this. You're not coming across a rock star every day, because they're a rarity. So keeping that in mind, building that connection. Be explicit, and this is another general reminder, and something maybe to emphasize. Being explicit as to the interest level in them. This may seem so basic, but don't leave a gray area. If you interacted with this rock star, let them know, maybe towards the end of the discussion, during the discussion, give them that sense. Don't leave it the rock star left the conversation saying, I have no idea how it went. That person wasn't even trying to build rapport with them, and it doesn't make, the momentum dies down. Keeping momentum high is you have to ensure that you're being explicit as to your interest level too. And I've seen this many, many times where this person just doesn't know, does this company even like me? And they like them so much, they didn't even care to say it. So almost stupid not to give that direct feedback. And I know we could talk about feedback in a different section, but it is something that I see a lot of.
And how do you phrase that? I mean, you say something like, we are very interested in you, or?
I enjoyed learning more about you. I would love to continue this process and introduce you to other team members. Perfect. Music to their ears. I know where I'm at with this company. I'm not in a gray area. And they love to hear that, because I hear feedback from the candidate and from the hiring company.
Right.
They're like, oh, they told me I'm going to move forward. They get excited. The momentum's high. Or they don't say anything. And it's yeah, I think I did well, but I have no idea. And then do you think that's going to work in your favor if they have no idea where they stand with your company? No. But the feedback definitely has to be timely. And if I were to put a timestamp, since you asked me about a timestamp, 1 to 3 business days, max. I see some companies, they go in, they're like, we have all the time in the world. We're the best company ever. Okay, but that rock star is a rarity, is getting approached on a daily basis. You do
Right.
have competition, you're just not seeing it.
Yeah. And how often, I think you may have answered this question before, but as far as, we want to keep up the momentum, have consistent communication.
Mhm.
Are we talking like once a week, twice a week, once every other week? What's
Mhm. Mhm.
the best practice here?
Best practice is, let's say you have a 4-step process. There's a
Mhm.
screening call to vet the candidate, just to make sure there's some high level alignment. Then they get
Mhm.
introduced to different team members. Within each step of the process, every hiring company has a different type of process, usually is what I've seen. They might have 3 interviews, 4 interviews. They might just have 2 interviews, make a decision. Regardless of what it is, 1 to 3 business days within each step, all the way to decision. Don't let too much time pass. And I'm going to get into this too, but for example, like 1 business day can make or break you hiring this person, can make
Okay.
the momentum. It takes only 1 business day. Sounds crazy again, but that's what I've seen, where someone doesn't get closed, someone doesn't move forward, someone pulls out of the process.
Okay.
And this is going to get into our next point, but let me know if the momentum I need to expand on anything.
Yeah, so I recently wrote a book about sales, mentioning sales again. I know we
Yeah,
talked
yeah,
about
that's good.
one interesting techniques that this guy incorporated in his sales practice is you always want to end every call with a task that both parties do to continue the momentum. You don't want to just end and with a vague intention of following up. And he
Mhm.
said you never want to just have a just check in call. Hey, I'm just checking in to see blah blah blah. He said you always want to have like a task at the end because that provides a reason for the subsequent call. Do you do anything similar where you kind of set it up to kind of keep that momentum going with a specific task or
Well, this
ask?
is this is what I've seen one of my clients do. I wish they would do this more consistently, and this is what I recommend. Is if you know for sure you are going to move forward with this person, let's just set up the next step on the call if possible. Let's put a cushion of 5 to 10 minutes for the end of the call.
Uh-huh.
You coordinate schedules and get that next step on the calendar if we can, or at
Yeah.
minimum gather their availability and flip that next step in the next 24 hours or less.
Okay.
Yes, that works very well, where
Mhm.
there's like an offer call, then a pre-offer. There are steps. You're right. Yes. There's sometimes too, clients might tell the candidate that I work with, you might say, hey, share your feedback with Rita. We'll coordinate the next step with her. So it's kind of like an indirect action step that,
Okay.
yes, connect with your recruiter and we'll discuss next steps if we're moving forward. Sometimes they have to think through it a little bit more. They might have to share some notes. They might not have a yes or no directly on the call, but if there's a strong yes, my recommendation is definitely trying to set that next step up, at minimum gathering availability, keeping that momentum high so that this person knows there's a next step coming.
Is it ever a good strategy to kind of withhold your interest a little bit? Like to continue with the dating analogy,
Mm,
everyone knows that it's kind of like, hey, you go on a couple dates with someone and you're super into them, but you're not sure if they feel the same way. It's kind of like the common wisdom is to like, don't be effusive don't be like, I like you so much, I want to get
yeah.
married, let's get in a relationship. It's sort of like if you show too much interest, it almost becomes counterproductive. Is there ever like a strategic reason to kind of like tamp down your interest, or you just be honest about it if you're at a hiring company?
So yes, the tone has to be balanced. It can't
Okay,
be, oh my gosh, at a 10 enthusiasm.
got it.
there has to be some enthusiasm because that does influence, but there has to be a balance. If it's too much, like you said, it's a turnoff.
Yeah.
But a rock star almost automatically knows when they're interested in a company. And when they hear that this other person is also interested, just like if you meet someone on a date and you're like, sometimes you automatically know, you get the gut feeling like, I really like this person. I would love to go on another date with them. You know, pretty quickly in the conversation. So if the other person is feeling the same way and you just mention it explicitly in the right tone, because yeah, you don't want to, it's like, you might have someone second guess if your tone is not appropriate, but it helps both parties be on the same page, especially if that other person is interested and they just didn't say it.
Okay.
But like you said, the tone, yes, it has to be the right tone or it might definitely lose momentum.
Can you think of a specific story, either in your own work or maybe you've heard of another recruiter, where the momentum was broken and the rock star ended up getting hired by someone else?
So there was, let's say, a candidate who was going through the process. This other part, they said, hey, we're moving forward. The other party couldn't get schedules to align, or maybe someone wasn't as flexible. And so it took too much time for that next step to actually occur, which hurt the process, which allowed this rock star to interview with others because again, they're getting approached more frequently. And it was really not showing maybe sometimes the hiring company not being as flexible with how they approach scheduling.
Okay.
That could be a specific example where the momentum is lost. And maybe the rock star still was interested, but they're like, hey, this company moved way faster and I'm actually really interested in them too. And so they kind of beat this other company.
So you should I mean, scheduling conflicts happen, sure, but I guess the lesson is do whatever needs to be done to move things around to find the 30 minutes or 1 hour you need to
find flexibility. Like, try to have flexibility in the process. Don't be so rigid. When companies are so rigid, they're like, oh, we're only interviewing on Tuesdays. Okay, do you think this rock star is just available on Tuesdays, or maybe they have a client commitment, maybe they have a work commitment? Usually rock stars are so dedicated to their work that they have to pivot as well, and not just the hiring company. So keeping that in mind maybe can help them increase the flexibility that they have. That, hey, like, okay, if you're a rock star company, would you expect everyone to just drop everything for you? Well, the rock star can't just drop everything because they have their commitments.
All right, so this kind of covers like the nuts and bolts of like momentum, keeping a momentum, communication, best practices. Let's get into the more like kind of, I don't know if you call it personal, emotional stuff, but this idea of rapport building, connection building, forming a connection. Yeah, we did talk a fair amount about this before, but we can kind of go over it again, and there might be other things that we did cover, specifics. And here I think it'd be really good to address yeah, like stories. This is a good opportunity for stories and like dialogue, like particular conversations you can remember where you were able to make that connection. You know, and you might also share how like, so you are an expert at making connection, but you might also want to talk about how like the CEO and, you know, high level people in the hiring company can do this too. So tell me what, yeah, how do you go about creating this connection with the rock star?
If it's okay, David, I really want to make a solid point for the communication quick turnaround time. So I mentioned every business day counts in the recruitment process. A rock star has 3+ companies reaching out to them on a daily basis. And they are in final stages with other companies, meaning they either have an offer or about to receive one. That's the assumption that this hiring company, these leaders should have about this rock star. Because then when they read it, hopefully it will help them understand more of why the urgency level is so high. Because usually that's what is going on. And then so many times I've seen, again, it be unsuccessful due to always too much time going by, like I said, slow, no feedback given timely, and we covered that. But just wanted to make sure that assumption is really highlighted.
Okay, that's good.
I try to coach my clients too, just like you probably do.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's not forget, this is a highly sought after person. I understand your company is great and I want to help. How can we move this process up? Like, what can I do to help? So it's not just about you, it's about them. It's about the rock star. Overall, the main point is you won't be able to find out who this rock star is unless you're learning more about them on a deeper level, not just surface level. And in order to do that, you need to ask powerful questions that get them speaking about themselves, their desires, their goals. This is how you will get to know them as a person, which will help you assess personality fit and whether your vision aligns with their goals and values. Not just the technical again. Let's say we already vetted the technical out, but now it's about like, hey, the cultural fit too, and within the environment. And then the more you get them to talk about themselves, the more you will see whether they are that aligned rock star to your environment. Plus, they will feel like you care about them as a whole versus just their technical skill set. And let's not forget, just like you said, it's a human being with feelings and desires to be fulfilled. So we're not treating this as just a transaction, like an assembly line. Okay, interview. No. When you come across this rock star, the approach needs to be different.
Okay.
And they need to feel like it's different, that it's not just that checkbox approach like we talked about in a previous chapter. Now, the stories I have to think through to build the connection. I do have some, I guess it overlaps with some of the other bullet points. And I think I shared with you one. But when I'm, for example, like when I'm building rapport and when I see my clients who are successful building rapport, they sometimes bring in a team member who has something similar to them, like there's a commonality, and I know it's in another bullet point, but they're able to leverage, let's say someone with a background, same university, or they have maybe a similar hobby, or they were an athlete and now they're like in a different career, something along those lines where there's a comfort level that allows them to open up even more. And that's how they start the rapport. I've seen them do that to build the connection.
Well, I actually did have another question related to that. So, like, I imagine the way this process works, the first few conversations is just you and the rock star talking. Later, if it gets to that, there'll be an interview with someone high up, maybe the CEO, maybe someone, someone else.
Yes.
Do you ever bring in the CEO or like another executive or upper level manager? You ever bring them in for a quick getting to know you chat before like the formal interview stage?
After I talk to them?
Yeah, like somewhere like kind of in the middle of the process. So
Yeah.
not when there's an interview happening, but like,
Yes.
you know.
So that could occur definitely. Like, let's say a coffee chat or a conversation that's slightly more informal. That could definitely happen. Typically, when that happens is if a candidate is more passive too. And
Okay.
I like, hey, I don't think they're ready to formally interview. Let's build the rapport more. They need a little bit more nurturing than just one discussion to go through the process. But during the formal interview process with an active candidate, definitely throughout the process, like a lunch or coffee. If a company's hosting a happy hour or an event, like let's say a bowling event or wine tasting, I've seen those work really well too to build rapport. Usually, when you want to kind of close the deal, you want to extend even more efforts if it's possible.
Yeah.
But I have
Got it.
seen that occur and it work in a company's favor.
I mean, again, it's a little like dating where like you gotta meet someone you really like. You're probably gonna take them to, as a nicer place without being too over the top. Like you wouldn't go on like the like a Michelin starred restaurant on your first or second date, but yeah, I mean you want to impress them a little bit. But that actually raises another point. So how much of your work is done on the phone or through Zoom, and how much of it is in person, and what do readers need to know about this? About obviously if you're interviewing someone in California, you're in New York, you're not going to meet face to face most likely. But if someone's in the area, or like what are some kind of guidelines for how to use phone versus Zoom versus in-person meeting, coffee chat versus drop by the office kind of thing.
I mean, I always recommend seeing the person, whether it's Zoom or in person. I would save time and not meet them in person right away. Just to make sure we vet some of this out. Let's see how they interact via video. With the world now, even if you are on site, you could have video calls with team members at a different location. How do they interact with others? So I think it's critical that we don't only do in person, and we do a mix of the video in person. Now, phone could be a strategy for someone that, I've seen it be successful too, as like that first call to learn more about someone and then continue learning more before wasting too much time. That's also a good strategy because both parties become more invested as the process keeps going. And those interactions will definitely happen. And sometimes it doesn't have to be necessarily a first interaction that's a video. It could be phone, and it could still work out. Like, they are going to be on the phone speaking to other team members, I'm sure. So then you can't see the gestures, and you could hear the tone. That's one thing that you can hear. But is there a specific cadence? I definitely recommend phone or video first, then continue with video if you can do in person. Of course, that's ideal. At least one touch point in person to gain more confidence. That would be most ideal.
How many touches or conversations usually happen before it goes to the actual job interview?
Oh, I mean, if I was talking to the candidate, then it would be depending on the candidate. So if they're active or passive. Sometimes an active could be one conversation I have with them. They're sold on the company. There's high interest, there's alignment, and then I'm making the introduction. If someone I already know, sometimes I don't even have a conversation. Hey, I'm sharing something. Let's just make sure things align. I can have an email conversation. Most of the time, though, it's phone or video to ensure there's alignment and for me to kind of dig in. And if it's just the company, then the company's doing their first screening call, phone or video, and then the process just keeps going. But I wouldn't have so many steps. Like, the person that is doing this vetting should be qualified. If that person is qualified, you don't have to have more than one conversation if they're qualified. If they're not, then those gray areas happen more.
So we've talked a lot about we've kind of been talking about the situation where the rock star is considering multiple companies, maybe even several offers. But imagine it's common the other way, where the hiring company isn't just looking at one rock star, they're talking to a few people at the same time. So does that change the game in the context of like building connection, vetting, all that stuff? Is it kind of like the same process for each of those people, or does that kind of change things up when the hiring company is also juggling different people?
That's a good question. Just remember, this is a good reminder in the book. At any point, one of these rock stars could fall off.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen many times. They think, oh my God, we're the first choice. They let their guard down.
Okay.
They fell off the next day because guess what? Another company gave them an offer and they were more interested in the other company. Just didn't tell you. Okay. So don't assume that these rock stars are going to be available. Treat every rock star in a similar manner because you do not know who's going to drop off, and you want to de-risk putting too much effort into any rock star.
Right.
You want to put the same type of energy and effort. And of course, like, if there's one that you like more, you're putting in a little, that's okay. But just remember, there could be that tomorrow, there could be a different outcome. They might no longer be in the process. It's not just just remember, it's not just your decision, it's their decision too. They have multiple companies reaching out to them on a daily basis. So nothing is promised, even with your top pick. And I've seen that happen where, oh my God, so much more energy into this person. We forgot about they're great too, but that was our first pick. So then they messed it up for the second and third runner up, who are amazing too, and maybe could even be better than their first pick.
Do you remember a specific case where that happened?
I mean, I feel like it happens so often, but what's the best case? That's the part that's a little tricky. You know, so a client might tell me, oh, we have such a solid pipeline of candidates. So they stop or they slow down discussions when they haven't yet secured the right person yet. That's a mistake because 5 people in the pipeline, now all of them have dropped off and we have no pipeline. Yeah. So I don't know how we can emphasize this, but don't allow the pipeline to dry up. But at the same time, I want to make sure, like, I don't say, hey, you have to have a balance. Obviously, you don't want 10 people for the same one role.
Being transparent if there's misalignment. So obviously you want to just ask questions about that as well. But tell me, yeah, here too, it would be good to discuss a specific case you've encountered where at some point in the process you realize, like, yeah, this company and this rock star, they're just not on fundamental things. So how do you handle a misalignment situation? And yeah, if you can share an anecdote or two.
Yes. So if there's a disconnect in general in the process, definitely want to address it early on instead of forcing a bad fit, a bad hire. Just in general, before I get into maybe a story, if there's a red flag or multiple red flags, we don't want to ignore that because that's a misalignment issue. And then sometimes, you know, bringing it back to the rapport, when you're building rapport, as mentioned, a professional gets more comfortable and starts sharing more, which sometimes we find misalignments. For example, if you add, and this happened recently actually during an interview process. So a hiring company asked this candidate, this candidate's super open, super honest, I think a little too honest, but this he built a lot of rapport, and they asked him a question about, you know, what did your boss say, or what type of constructive feedback have you received from those at a higher level that you report into? And he mentioned that he received feedback that he seems to be more of like an individual contributor, can work in a team, but seems like that's not his preference. And he kind of like reiterated that he would rather work individually versus working in a team environment, which some roles, you know, you are an individual contributor, but in this role, it was a client-facing role, and you're always collaborating with the client, with the internal team. And so although the technical skill set aligned, so many other things aligned, he was a great person, they uncovered this red flag and they couldn't get over it. Because of their client service environment, they couldn't let go of this comment that he said, and they couldn't move forward with an offer. So when you're building that rapport, it can work in your favor because the misalignment can show up at unexpected times and save you money on hiring someone that might not be the best fit. And this might not just get uncovered right away. Okay. If you're deeply learning about someone, more likely than not, these items can show up. And they will work in your favor because sometimes you're like, oh, you don't know until they get into the organization that this person doesn't even want to work in a team. Okay, great. Well, we just found this out during the interview process. We're saving ourselves time and money. Perfect.
Okay. When you said they were a little too honest, did you mean in the sense of them saying that they don't really like working with people, they prefer flying solo, or were they too honest about something else?
It was almost like this person can work in a team and can still be successful, but their high preference is working individually. So long term, if someone's in a team and they prefer individual, well, they might not stay at the company. They might go look for that individual contributor role. So for retention purposes, their company wasn't the best fit. It didn't fully align with who this person is, even though they're great and they're smart, they're personable. And, it happens. He had a lot of potential. And I didn't get that from him. So I was like, wow, it happens to me too. Like, sometimes you miss something like that. But it's because you have multiple conversations, building deeper rapport within each conversation, in which at this point he had probably 5 conversations.
All right,
Not
yeah.
whole questions though. This is okay, asking about constructive feedback. And yeah, maybe someone might not be as honest, but if you make someone feel comfortable, they're more likely to be honest and more
Right.
likely that your company will identify a misalignment in the process.
Do rock stars ever lie about about essential things to land a job? Because it's not in their interest to do so. Like if a company is like, we really, we expect everyone to work 60 hours, and that you're not a workaholic. But
Mhm.
it happens often that candidates kind of will embellish a little just to
Mhm.
land. You find rock stars doing this, and how do you handle that?
Yes, it could happen. But if approached in the right manner, if the hiring company is approaching it in the right manner, again, rapport. Someone opens up more
Mhm.
when you've built that connection. It's not at 100%, but if you want
Yeah,
to increase the likelihood of finding misalignment, someone being truthful and more honest,
yeah.
they have to feel comfortable to be honest. And it's happened. It's happened where someone maybe felt like, yeah, that's for me, but then they had multiple conversations and they're like, you know what, it's just not the best fit, but I still like the organization, but it's not the
So,
best fit.
so like that connection or comfort is the best antidote to this.
Yes.
If you have another story from your experience of a rock star kind of opened up, like I mentioned at first they weren't really talking, giving you like 2-word answers, but then you said the right things or you made the right connection, and then they kind of spilled their guts, or maybe not quite like that, but can you think of a case where, and again here we want specifics like even dialogue, where you were able to kind of work your magic and get them to kind of crack their exterior and get them talking?
There are quite a few times that could have happened. That conversation I shared with you,
Okay.
guy in the beginning seemed like a little closed off, a little bit of an ego. I knew I could use that Lebanese thing. So I'm like, you know what? Just gonna incorporate that in here. And all of a sudden he started opening up more. And then we ended up talking for like an hour. I don't even know if it was a little bit over an hour because of that one commonality and because I made him feel a little bit more comfortable. I may have also mentioned, wow, you've had a lot of success. And even though he had a slight ego going in, I didn't feel like that was his true self when I was talking to him. And it was just like maybe like a front. I'm just learning more about him for the first time. So
Well,
maybe rubbing his accomplishments, using the Lebanese tactic, brought
uh-huh.
out who he really is. And then after that conversation, I continued to stay close with him. I helped him prepare for an interview. He started opening up more. He finally like opened up why he really left the recent organization he was part of. He told me about his wife. His wife had just gotten promoted. She's a physician. She became a partner, which gave him more of the ability to leave where he was to find a better fit that aligns with him. So like he started opening up more and more because of the rapport. Like now when I really study this, like why did he start? Then he's like becoming even more attracted to the opportunity because the rapport is so strong with me. He's like, oh, he's a passive candidate. This is rubbing, like I'm getting warmer to this opportunity now. He kept saying things like that. But it was because again, with the rapport, how can we find alignment with the rapport? The alignment is again, what's your commonality if you have one? And then also stroking someone's successes.
Yeah.
That can help. They want to be, they're seen and heard for all of you. No one really talks about it. They just do it. and then they don't really get rewarded as much, or someone doesn't like usually praise them because it's just expected kind of thing. Oh, this person just, they're great and they're consistent and they're this, but no one really like says those things to them. So I think it does shift something in how they communicate, how they interact with you. Candidate, really, really wanted an opportunity where he had some type of ownership. So I was upfront with him the whole time. This is more of, hey, you can earn these incentives, these bonuses, but there's no ownership, there's no equity. And he went through the interview process and he had another offer, and the other offer had ownership, had that equity component. There was misalignment with that. I don't know if that's a good story though, but he did end up going through the interview process, yet we all knew like he really wanted that. I think if the company knows and they continue conversations, sometimes it's a risk.
There's another part of this chapter, one of these bullet points, which I thought is interesting, is how to spot red flags in someone that you thought was a rock star. Because again, most of the book is kind of working on the assumption that you really want this rock star. That's the goal, and obviously most cases that is the goal, but I'm sure that it happens. I think you told me that it does. It's sometimes you realize, and that's just a matter of alignment, but maybe like you realize this rock star is not really a rock star, or they're not the rock star that you need, or maybe they're even like a toxic person. I don't know if you've encountered, but how, if you're the hiring company, like, what are some things to look out for to make sure that you don't hire the wrong person, and like signs that you should kind of cut bait in the middle. This person's no good. I know it probably boils down to trust your gut, as we said in the interview. What are some other kind of guidelines for spotting these red flags?
Yes, and spotting red flags, it might not just come within the first conversation.
Okay, that's good.
It could come as you start to learn more about the person. It might not just be that first conversation. So stay aware that the red flag might not just be immediate, but pay attention to the details and the story of this person, because what I've seen sometimes is, okay, there's an inconsistency in their story, in their background.
That's interesting. Can you recall a specific case?
Yes, I can actually. And this is where I was trying to do what's right, even though it was going to hurt us.
Okay, that's
This
good.
candidate was in the final round. I'd met the CFO, the VP, the CEO, and getting to the next step, final step, I realized within his story that there was this alignment between his resume and his LinkedIn profile. And this came out through one of the interview steps.
Okay.
With the VP of finance. So when I heard this, and actually the candidate was telling me that he kind of messed up what he was saying and the timelines. So I'm like, okay, let me not jump to conclusions. Let me do some diligence before I immediately say this is a red flag. Let me do some diligence. And this is important. When you sense there's a red flag, take another step and conduct some diligence to verify that it is a red flag. And so what I did was I immediately just went to his LinkedIn and resume, and I'm like, okay, something is off.
Okay.
I didn't catch this before. Usually I'm like, okay. It was kind of like a year was off, which threw a lot of different things off. So then I decided to just approach the candidate, have an honest discussion. I've been building rapport with this person for a few weeks because the process was going slow, which is not ideal. And he opened up to me about him having anxiety, all these other things, and kind of said like, yeah, I didn't want my resume to look like I had too many jumps.
Okay.
So I knew he trusted me by saying it to me. Now he told me the truth. Now what can I do? Should I tell my client that I, unfortunately, overlooked this detail? Or should I just keep the process moving? He had another interview scheduled. And I just slept on it because I hate to be, that's not my approach. I don't want to be dishonest. Did I feel like it was the biggest gap? No, but I felt now this is part of his I see misalignment with the values, with the CFO who I knew for a few years. And she wants things very detailed, honest, transparency. And in accounting and finance, you cannot be dishonest. It's unethical. It's unethical in general, but like in finance too, it's really, really unethical. And she was a CPA, the CFO. And as part of the designation is like, you cannot be unethical. You can lose your designation. And so I went back to the company. I just said, hey, I think there's a red flag. I want you guys to be aware. And this is the information. They made a decision. Yes, after reviewing this, we can't move forward. Boom, but I did the right thing. Guess what happened the next day for doing the right thing? We could bring this back to law of attraction. A candidate I've been trying to connect with reaches out to me and says he would like to have a discussion. I mentioned foodware. Swear to God, this was the next day. And I felt horrible. I'm like, this guy was about to get an offer. And I just, boom, it's nothing happened. The next, and this candidate was 10 times better. I was like, thank you, God. And it went smoothly. They all loved him. It was like the smoothest process ever, all from doing the right thing. So law of attraction, like you do the right thing happens. That's what I feel happened there. I've seen this many times now happen in recruitment, like the recruiting side. So there was a misalignment between the resume and LinkedIn. Another red flag is they get frustrated with the questions you're asking. Like, okay, is this person really going to be the best team member or the best leader if they can't even have an honest interview? And if they can't be under fire for a little bit, every job is going to feel some type of stress, some type of discomfort, I would say. I sense it as a red flag, and it's a cultural misalignment if there's no patience in the process, or they give you attitude, something like that. They don't even crack a smile. Something is off. Like, that's not going to be the best team ever. I know it sounds so basic.
Yeah, no, these are key.
Yeah. So maybe we can make it like a funny thing. I don't know, in this chapter. The gut feeling, most important, like you said. I have a great story for this one. So one of my friends he literally asked me, I was in his office in New York City, if you want to add a little bit of detail. He was literally asking me, how do you know you're speaking to a rock star? And I said, hey, that's a good question. Oh, he said, do you look at the school they went to? For me, now that I've been in this for so long, it's probably not the most ideal answer, but it is a gut feeling now. And he's like, oh my God, funny you said that. We hired someone a few months back. He opened up quickly. He was also Lebanese. He opened up quickly. He said, we hired this girl from a trusted referral. Her resume was perfect. The interview seemed to be perfect. Her education was perfect. I think she went to MIT. It was like the most ideal on paper and even in person. And they even gave her a presentation to do in the office. Now they gave her some time to put it together though. But he was like, when she got into our company, she could not produce results at all. He said he kept looking at this resume and at her and was like, is this the same person? But in the interview process, he said, I had a gut feeling something is off, but then I'm looking at her resume. Okay, she went to this university. She presented well. Everyone liked her. But I felt something was off. And I said, exactly, that gut feeling, don't go against it.
I guess we also might want to make the point that the advantage of hiring someone like yourself is that you can be the gut for the company. Like the average, like this is the kind of thing, the kind of instinct that you cultivate through experience.
Yes.
So if you're not a recruitment expert, then your intuition is not quite as attuned. But
yes, if we can emphasize that, that would be amazing.
You can spot things that,
because you can't teach that, right? Like you could give a playbook to someone and say, hey, go recruit someone, be successful. I've had conversations with thousands and thousands and thousands of candidates and people in the corporate world in my recruitment business. I can smell, I hate to say smell BS or dig in more than the average. At the end of the day, it's my reputation. My reputation is on the line with every single candidate I present. So I take that to heart. I don't know if we can emphasize that too, but like, that's an extension of me. My candidates are an extension of me. That's how I feel and how I approach helping my clients. They are an extension of me. And if I sense something's off, I can't present them, or if it's during the process, like I just said, I have to raise awareness so they can make their decision. It's not my decision, but I can give them some guidance at least.
All right. So my last question is, what like recruitment that was successful were you most proud of? And another way of looking at this might be, which one was the most challenging that really required you to like dig deep and use all your skills?
Oh, there's a good one. I was placing a controller level candidate, very passive. Those are the hardest, as we know now, as we keep talking about the passive takes more energy and effort. I would speak to this candidate more frequently to be what she called her sounding board. And I was basically being her career coach, not just the recruiter for my hiring company. I was really like, I don't know, there was a connection. You know, when you connect with someone, they just like you, they trust you. She came from a big 4 organization, had 10 plus years of experience, was making a transition. She's been at her company dedicated for 10 plus years. This is not an easy move for her, especially as a passive candidate. What I found that aligned with my client was amazing though. Outside of her accounting, finance, technical skill set, she had a love for art. And my client was in the art industry. She had a minor in art history. She had her own art collection. I started learning more about her. And my client dealt with like, you know, high net worth individuals, like very expensive artwork that attracted her. Even though her artwork was like not at that level, it's something that maybe she was, you know, is a goal of hers. So there was some alignment there that helped her also maybe open up to me and start using me as like a career coach. Like literally, she was proactive in asking me to talk about her feedback and her thoughts and how she's feeling. I can't go in, I don't remember all of the details, but I remember to this day that she called me her sounding board. She would, and I became friendly with her. I went to dinner with her and her boyfriend, me and my husband, and yeah, like we became close because the connection was so strong, but the connection led to me coaching her outside of the recruitment process and helping her on the emotional side, like her fulfillment. I think she needed some of that.
Okay.
Get to hear some of it in the process. Feels super hard for someone to maybe say that about someone else that they have just met and getting to know. They haven't known them for years. It's only been a couple weeks.
Were you, I mean, how did you feel about that? Because it's kind of like, it's nice to be sounding board of someone, but it wasn't really your job at that point.
No, but my job is alignment. My job, if I get to know her more and I sense more alignment, I'm going to push more alignment. I'm going to emphasize the alignment. I kind of understood who she was as a person and who the CFO was. And I was emphasizing alignment between his leadership style and who she is. She, quick learner. The CFO doesn't want to be on top of someone, wants someone to kind of maybe take over that role from controller to CFO. So I'm painting the picture for her in the process, hearing her more deeply, then helping emphasize certain parts. So I'm doing my hiring company a service too, by being a trusted advisor to the candidate.
Okay.
If I don't extend those additional efforts, the success level drops.
Right.
So that's the stuff that a hiring company might not see at all. I didn't even tell this CFO all of the stuff that went on. I typically don't tell all of my clients. I don't, but I do it. I do it because I know it can increase the success. It can increase the likelihood that they can have a great professional for many years to come. And then that professional can be happy too. So I
Okay.
love, that's something I love to see. And if I can help, I put in more efforts for it to be successful. And of course, the financial motive, yeah, I'm financially driven in the right manner with the alignment, you know? It's a combination of all of those things. And I kind of
And
like to do it.
yeah.
I enjoy, it's not, I don't, doesn't bother me. It kind of like makes me feel like I'm making an impact to her, to this person and to the hiring company.
In the end, was she recruited by?
Yeah, that's a huge one. Huge one. 'Cause passive is the hardest.
Okay.
Hardest.
How long did this whole like courtship continue? Because you guys were going to dinners and stuff. So how long?
Well, I went to dinner with her not during the process. Sorry. I went, like, we became friends after she joined the company, and
Gotcha.
we went to dinner and just stayed connected in general. I'm proud of that I helped on a deeper level. Deeper level means more energy and time commitment.
Yeah. Okay.
And not knowing the outcome because passive candidates are not ready.
Yeah.
So it is a risk that I put in, not a risk, because I'm building a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm putting more effort because my gut feeling is sensing this can work out. I'm feeling a lot of alignment, so I go with it. And I feel like I'm proud of it because of that, because I sensed my gut. I listened to it. I took the right action steps. I became more trusted in the process, and it worked in everyone's favor. And again, the challenge was passive. Obviously, it takes more effort and energy with passive. And I still remember it till this day. I haven't even thought about it till now, honestly. That sounding board, which she said to me. It was like, I was only on the phone with her, but I was smiling hard at that point. Like, oh,